Today I am going to tell you the story of a man who was neither a thief nor a prisoner, nor the leader of any criminal gang. Instead, he was the CEO of the two biggest car companies in the world. This man was not a prisoner in any jail, but he was kept under house arrest throughout Japan. Because of this, Japanese police officers were keeping an eye on him for 2,400 hours, and since there were orders to arrest him the moment he tried to escape from Japan, he chose such a unique and astonishing way to escape that no one had ever heard of or seen before. The biggest question in this whole story is why the Japanese government kept such a high-profile man confined in their country, and what was the reason that they kept him under surveillance for 2,400 hours. So who was this man, how did he deceive the Japanese police and escape, and what shocking revelations did he make after fleeing? After knowing this, you will be astonished. Today's story is about Carlos Ghosn, who was a Lebanese billionaire and also the CEO of Japan's famous car company Nissan. Carlos belonged to Lebanon, but since he was the CEO of two big car companies, apart from Lebanon, he also had French and Brazilian nationality. From his early days, Carlos had a deep interest in cars, and that's why, right after completing his graduation, he got a job at the Michelin tire company. Since Carlos was very hardworking, on the strength of his hard work, he very quickly became the chief head of Michelin's American division. Because Michelin had good relations with Renault, and due to Carlos's capability and dedication, Michelin was progressing a lot, which drew the attention of Renault's CEO toward Carlos. This was the period when the company started transforming from the inside. A company that was going through very bad times and was on the verge of shutting down started earning profits. The method Carlos adopted to make the company profitable was very aggressive. He began cutting every expense that was causing losses to the company. That is why he shut down Renault's low production factories and laid off the workers there. After losing their jobs, thousands of workers protested against Renault and Carlos in different countries. Carlos, along with the entire Renault company, started being known all over France as the cost killer. Carlos's full focus was only on making Nissan profitable in any way possible, and for that, he was eliminating every expense that caused losses. Because of this, Renault came out of its bad phase and emerged as a powerful company. After this success, Carlos had only one goal, to expand the company's business and partner with big car companies around the world. To expand, Carlos decided that now his company needed a partnership with an international car company that had a good reputation in the market and was a well-known name. And from here began Carlos's new journey. The name in Carlos's mind was Nissan, which was a very famous Japanese car company. However, though Nissan was famous, it was also going through a worse phase than Renault's bad times. Nissan was in debt of $20 billion, and despite producing more than 50 car models, only 3 of their models were selling. On behalf of Renault, Carlos presented an offer to Nissan that they wanted to buy 37% stake in their company so that they could work together and bring it out of this bad time. After this partnership, Renault would get a good amount of control over Nissan. And since the Japanese, who are known for their pride and control over any industry, were not ready to allow any foreign company to buy so much stake in their company and interfere in their decisions, it was a matter of concern. But since no Japanese bank was giving Nissan a loan because it was going through very bad times and no company was ready to collaborate with them, Nissan accepted Carlos's offer and agreed to partner with Renault. Before taking control of Nissan, Carlos took an oath, and that oath was that he would make this company profitable within 1 year, and within just 3 years, the company would be free of all debts. If he failed, he would resign from the company. Nissan, seeing its company drowning, agreed to this partnership and sold its 37% stake to Renault. After this, Carlos was made the CEO of the company. This was very strange and shocking because, till that time, no Japanese company had ever been headed by a foreigner. As soon as he took the post of CEO, Carlos arrived in Japan and began visiting every Nissan factory. At the same time, he started making strategies to make the company profitable. As soon as Carlos took charge, he shut down 5 of Nissan's factories and laid off all the workers there. This was exactly the same method he had used in Renault. After that, the factory workers also came out on the streets, protesting against Renault and Nissan's partnership. On the other hand, Carlos neither cared about any protest nor listened to anyone. He only made decisions that were right for making the company profitable. Among these decisions, he took 2 more big steps. The first was that he declared English as the official language of Nissan, a Japanese company where people gave great importance to their language, so that the company could expand worldwide. The second decision was that he ended the tradition of giving promotions to seniors in the company. Now, he gave incentives and promotions only to those who brought business and profits to the company. This was the decision that created many enemies against Carlos inside the company, but because of these same decisions, Nissan's situation started improving, and it began earning profits. Within just 1 year, the company started making good profits and reaching new heights. Because of this, people started saying that Carlos had a magic touch, and he could turn loss-making companies into profitable ones. Now Carlos's name had become famous not only in Japan but all over the world, and his name and photo began appearing in major newspapers and magazines, earning him one award after another. The extent of his fame can be gauged from the fact that in Japan, a comic book was launched about him, selling more than 1 million copies. People all over Japan began looking at him with great respect, and now, whenever he entered a restaurant, people stood up and applauded him. Many years passed after this partnership, and during this time, Renault and Nissan reached new heights of success. Then came the year 2005, when the CEO of Renault retired. After this retirement, Carlos was made the CEO of Renault. For the first time in history, one person became the CEO of 2 companies at the same time, and thus Carlos became the CEO of the 2 biggest car companies in the world. Due to handling 2 companies at the same time, the pressure on Carlos increased a lot. Because of this, his family advised him to resign from one position, but he flatly refused. As CEO, the salary Carlos received from one company was $7 million. Although according to foreign company CEO standards, this salary was reasonable, according to Japanese company standards, it was very high. This was the very resentment that later forced Carlos to flee Japan. Carlos loved living a very luxurious life, and that's why he organized big parties and bought expensive things for himself and his family. He had his own private jet and also a yacht worth $10 million. Because of his love for cars, he bought many luxury and expensive cars for himself and lived a life full of grandeur with the money he earned. While in Japan, on one hand, big ministers and company heads used to go to their offices on bicycles, Carlos's expensive cars and lavish lifestyle surprised the people there and made them start hating him. This very hatred brought such a turning point in Carlos's life on November 19 that it completely changed his life forever. That was the day Carlos had a meeting with Nissan's board of directors, and Carlos was in Paris at that time. After finishing his work in Paris, Carlos boarded his private jet and left for Tokyo, Japan. But as soon as Carlos's plane landed in Tokyo, the scene he saw left him stunned and confused. Carlos saw that Japanese police were already waiting for him on the runway, and as soon as the plane landed, the police surrounded it from all sides and entered the plane to arrest him. A shocked Carlos asked the police why he was being arrested, to which an officer replied that he was being arrested on charges of financial fraud. After the arrest, the police took him to a jail and locked him up. This news spread like wildfire from Japan to the whole world. Every news channel and newspaper was showing this news, because of which Nissan's shares started falling rapidly. Meanwhile, Carlos was completely unaware in jail about why he had been locked up. He was waiting for his company Nissan to send a lawyer to get him out. But he got a big shock when he found out that the company had appointed one of the board of directors as the new CEO, who held a press conference and announced that, in the investigation, CEO Carlos Ghosn was found guilty of financial fraud, and they were immediately removing him from the company. Carlos was accused of being about to receive a very large retirement fund from the company, which was a huge amount, but he had not informed the tax department about it. The clear meaning of this was that he wanted to save tax on this amount, and the police had arrested him on charges of tax evasion. During the interrogation, the police asked Carlos why he had not informed the tax department about this retirement fund. Carlos replied that the amount for the retirement fund had not yet been decided, and he would take the retirement fund only when he retired from the company. Since he had not even received that amount, how could he inform the tax department about it in advance? Carlos began to sense a conspiracy in the entire matter. He also told the police that he was being trapped, but the police did not believe his words and kept saying that it was a financial fraud. Carlos's suspicion about a conspiracy seemed to be correct because it appeared that even the police were involved in it, and the reason behind this was the behavior that the police were showing toward him. Even though there was no solid evidence against Carlos, the police put him in Kossuth prison, where he had to spend 23 hours a day alone in a cell. The most surprising thing was that this kind of punishment was given only to those prisoners who had committed some major crime, but Carlos had neither committed any crime nor any theft. Despite this, he was kept in that prison for 3 months. Meanwhile, during the ongoing investigation, Nissan's board of directors made several allegations against Carlos to defame him. The board claimed that Carlos had purchased several houses and properties in Paris, Beirut, and Brazil with the company's money. But Carlos told the police that the board of directors was fully aware of all these properties because they were registered in the company's name, and he used those properties for company meetings as the CEO. The board of directors made another allegation, that the party Carlos hosted on the 15th anniversary of the Renault-Nissan partnership was actually his birthday party, and the expenses were borne by the company. This party was held at the Palace of Versailles in France, and the amount spent on it was $700,000. Now the company suspected that under the name of the partnership anniversary, Carlos had celebrated his birthday party. But since this party had taken place many years ago and both companies' boards of directors had attended it, the biggest question now was why the board remained silent for so many years and why they were only talking about it now. This entire matter pointed toward a conspiracy. It was clearly visible that an attempt was being made to trap Carlos. Now the question arose, if Carlos had done nothing wrong, then why, after 19 years of the Nissan-Renault partnership, did the Nissan board of directors suddenly go after him and try to frame him? The reason behind this was that the French government had bought a large stake in Renault, which constantly made Nissan's board of directors fear that the French government would merge the two companies and turn them into a single company. As a result, Nissan's identity would disappear, and only Renault's name would remain. As I already told you, the Japanese are known for keeping control over their industries, and they could not tolerate, at any cost, that such a big and prestigious Japanese company would slip out of their hands. So they made Carlos the scapegoat and falsely implicated him in a fraud case. Nissan's board of directors believed that Carlos was the one trying to carry out this merger. But their assumption was completely wrong because Carlos had always believed that every company should have its own identity. Yet, due to a mere misunderstanding, Carlos went from being a hero to a corrupt CEO. Carlos had to face this defamation not only in Japan but also in France, as newspapers there left no stone unturned in tarnishing his image. They published every piece of news that damaged his public reputation. Seeing Carlos's image being ruined, the French government and Renault also backed off. Even the company that Carlos had rescued from its bad days made no effort to get him out of the case. Although no one still had solid evidence against Carlos, he continued to remain in jail. The police wanted him to make some kind of confession at any cost. They interrogated Carlos constantly, sometimes for as long as 14 hours at a stretch. They even tried to scare and threaten his family. At the same time, Carlos was kept alone in a cell for 2,400 hours so that he would break down and confess to the fraud. But Carlos rejected the false allegations and refused to admit to any fraud. Now Carlos had already spent 3 months in jail. The Tokyo court finally allowed him to come out on bail, the amount of which was $9 million. After paying this bail amount, as soon as Carlos came out of jail, the media was already waiting for him there. Some journalists even followed him to his house. Because Carlos was very famous, this case was in the headlines, and everyone knew where Carlos lived. Everyone was keeping an eye on him, and this continued for several weeks. It became difficult for Carlos and his family to step out of the house, as press reporters always stood outside with cameras. During this time, Carlos made a tweet in which he wrote that on April 11th, he would hold a press conference where he would expose the conspiracy against him. Within just 24 hours of this tweet, the Japanese police arrested Carlos again. The reason behind this was that they feared Carlos might reveal everything in the press conference, including what they had done to him in jail. Although Carlos had come out on bail after paying such a huge amount, he was arrested again. Carlos's lawyers had already anticipated this possibility, so they had prepared a plan B in advance by recording a video of Carlos. After arresting him again, Carlos was kept in jail for 21 days, and this time he came out on bail after paying $5 million. To release Carlos on bail, the Japan court not only took $14 million in total but also confiscated his Lebanese and Brazilian passports. Now, he could use only his French passport for identification. The Japan court also ordered that Carlos could not leave Japan. In addition, his personal phone and laptop were also seized. During this period, Carlos sent his wife and children back to France because he did not want them to get into any trouble. The court also ordered that Carlos could neither talk to nor message his wife and children, and if he was caught doing so, he would be arrested again. From this entire case, it was clear that the Japanese authorities wanted to weaken Carlos at any cost. They separated him from his family so that he would break down, and Carlos understood this very well. He realized that it would be very difficult to get justice. So, he told his lawyer to inform his wife to take the children and move to Beirut. Now Carlos was completely alone, far from his wife and children. He began to understand that he might not survive this situation. That's when an idea came to his mind, an idea to escape from Japan that no one had ever heard or seen before. After being released on bail, Carlos was living in a house in Japan. Although he could not leave the country, he was allowed to move anywhere inside Japan. To execute his plan, Carlos first bought a phone that nobody knew about. He started making calls through this phone from his bathroom so that nobody would find out about it. Now the biggest question was, who were these people Carlos was secretly calling from his bathroom? The answer is that their identities never came to light, because helping Carlos escape could have put their lives in danger. It is said that Carlos's team consisted of 10 to 15 people who helped him flee Japan, but Carlos never revealed their names. At first, the plan was that Carlos would escape by sea. But since the sea route to Lebanon was very long and would take too much time, only one final option remained: Carlos would have to leave Japan by plane. Because the court had ordered him not to leave the country, he could not officially show his passport and board a plane. So the question now was how he would get on a plane without the police noticing. That's when a member of his team came up with a shocking and extraordinary idea that stunned everyone. Carlos's team began searching for airports where security was a bit lighter, and the checking process was not too strict. Then they found an airport in Osaka where they discovered a huge loophole. It was a very small airport with very few flights arriving and departing. At this airport, Carlos's team noticed something. During checking, large boxes containing musical instruments were not put into the X-ray scanners for checking. The reason behind this was that these boxes were so large that they could not fit into the X-ray scanners. And from here, Carlos's team got the idea to hide him inside these large boxes and help him escape from Japan. Under this plan, it was decided that 2 members of the team would come to Japan posing as musicians, bringing along 2 big boxes filled with musical instruments. They would tell the airport authorities that they had a concert in Tokyo and, right after that, they had to leave for their other concert in Istanbul. This clearly meant they had to enter and exit Japan within the same day. Because police officers were keeping watch on Carlos's house all the time, even though he could move anywhere inside Japan, a trip from Tokyo to Osaka might raise suspicion in the minds of those police officers. That's why it was very important to somehow trick those police officers and reach Osaka from Tokyo without them knowing. Carlos asked his lawyer to tell him some way to get out of there. In response, his lawyer suggested that he call some journalists who covered scandal news to come outside his house. Seeing those news reporters, the police officers keeping watch would leave. Carlos did exactly that. When he called a few journalists outside his house, he noticed that the police officers watching his house immediately disappeared. They left because if media reporters saw them there, it could create a big scandal for the Japanese authorities. As soon as those journalists spoke with Carlos and left, the police came back again and stood outside his house to keep watch on him. Seeing this, Carlos's doubt turned into certainty that the police officers did not want to be seen by journalists. Carlos now understood very well that if he wanted to get rid of these police officers, he would have to call journalists. And then he did the same thing again. The day fixed for Carlos's escape from Japan was December 29, 2019. But because Carlos was very famous all over Japan and his appearance was completely different from Japanese people, he wore a long jacket and a mask, which at that time was very uncommon in Japan. After putting on the jacket and mask, Carlos looked out of the window of his house and saw that police officers were sitting in their cars outside. Then he again called some journalists and told them that the police were standing outside his house, and this time they would be seen. As soon as the police outside got this news, they all disappeared. Carlos was waiting for this exact moment. As soon as the police left, Carlos, wearing the jacket and mask, came out of his house and went straight to the Grand Hyatt Hotel. After reaching the hotel, he met the two team members who were going to help him escape, posing as musicians. Their names were Mike Taylor and George Zayek. Both of them took Carlos from the hotel, and they left in a taxi for the train station, where they were to catch a train to Osaka. After reaching Osaka, they went directly to a hotel room, where two large boxes were already waiting for them. Although both boxes were filled with musical instruments, they emptied one box and laid Carlos inside to check whether he could breathe. They also made small holes in this box so that Carlos could breathe easily. After staying there for a while, Carlos changed his clothes and lay inside the box. Then they covered him with a white cloth. After properly sealing the box, they called room service and told the hotel staff to take this box down on a trolley. They also instructed them to handle the box carefully because it contained very expensive musical instruments. Along with this box, the box full of musical instruments was also taken down to the hotel lobby, and both were placed inside a van. The van went straight to Osaka Airport. After reaching the airport, the team members unloaded the boxes and started moving towards customs. Nobody at the airport had any idea that Carlos was inside the box, but Carlos could clearly hear all the sounds of the people around him. A little later, when the trolley with the boxes stopped, Carlos realized they had reached customs. These two team members had entered Japan earlier the same day through Osaka Airport as musicians with their musical instrument boxes. At that time too, the same customs officer had been on duty as now. The two team members told the customs officers that after finishing their concert, they had to leave today for another concert in Istanbul. The customs officer recognized them immediately. He asked them about their concert and what was inside the boxes. They replied that both boxes contained the same musical instruments that had been checked at customs that morning. Meanwhile, to distract the customs officer, one of them said their musical instrument boxes must be handled very carefully or they could break, and also added that they were getting late for their next concert, so the officer should not take too long with the checking. Since those boxes had already been checked in the morning when they entered Japan, and because they were leaving in a private jet, the customs officer cleared the boxes without checking them again. The two team members took all their luggage and the boxes towards the private plane, inside one of which Carlos was hiding. As soon as they reached the plane, both boxes were loaded inside. Carlos, inside the box, waited for the plane to take off. Even after the box was placed inside the plane, Carlos stayed hidden for half an hour because he was afraid of being caught. Then he heard the sound of the plane's engine and felt the plane moving on the runway. Realizing this, he breathed a sigh of relief. A team member unlocked the box, and Carlos came out. The plane had taken off from Osaka airport, and thus, with excellent planning and the help of his team, Carlos escaped from Japan. This plane landed directly in Istanbul, where another plane was waiting for Carlos on the runway. That plane took him to Beirut, where his wife and children were. Within just 1 hour, Carlos had landed at Beirut airport. As soon as he arrived, the customs officers there recognized him. Because Carlos was from Lebanon and had become very famous there due to this whole matter, the Lebanese government and people were fully supporting him. That was why the customs officers at Beirut airport welcomed and congratulated him. Carlos was now reunited with his wife and children. Meanwhile, news spread like wildfire from Japan to the entire world that Carlos had escaped from Japan. As soon as this became known, the Japanese authorities and media blamed Carlos's lawyers, saying their negligence allowed him to escape. At the same time, an Interpol arrest warrant was issued against Carlos. Since the Lebanese government was fully supporting Carlos, they refused to hand him over to Japan. In Beirut, Carlos held a press conference and revealed everything that had happened to him. He also exposed Nissan's board of directors, explaining why and how they framed him. In the press conference, Carlos accused Nissan, saying that the company's board of directors did not want Renault to take over Nissan at any cost. Therefore, to end this partnership, they made him the scapegoat. After the escape, Carlos gave several interviews to different channels but never revealed the names of those who had helped him escape. Although the Lebanese government was not handing Carlos over to Japan, they made an offer to the Japanese government. They could give them Carlos's case file so that a trial could be held in a Lebanese court. But the Japanese authorities refused this offer. Carlos is still living in Lebanon today, and his case is still pending in the Japanese court. This clearly means that if Carlos leaves Lebanon, Interpol will arrest him, because the Japanese government has not cancelled his arrest warrant. The most surprising thing was that France's judicial system also issued an arrest warrant against Carlos, as they had received news that he had committed some fraud in the Renault company. But no one ever found solid evidence against him. In every interview, Carlos said that Japan had handled this case very wrongly, and if he had not escaped, they would have killed him. Anyway, what the truth is, no one has found out to this day. Carlos is still hiding from the world, living in Lebanon with his wife and children. This was the story of a genius CEO who took two sinking companies to new heights, but due to their internal politics, he himself was made the scapegoat. How did you like this story? Write your thoughts in the comments section. Like and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.